I've
kind of like
heard
a
of this.
kind of like a kibbutz. Also, yeah, I know I see Fausto. You want to jump in here too? But
Hi
hi,
guys,
Fausto.
how you doing? This got really interesting after the Cyberbank talk, so I had to ask a question
Oh, yeah.
about your project. By the way, I'm from Uruguay, South America, and
Ooh,
I'm an economist and a Java programmer. Um, I had a question about the economic policy that
Ah, okay.
if you have thought about that, about taxation, um, taking the opportunity that we're talking about society, politics, and stuff like that. Um, what's your stance about taxation on Mars? I mean, do you think it should be free of taxation as it was, as America was at the beginning, or do you think there should be
Mm.
some kind of progressive taxes or flat taxes? Uh, just
Well,
want to know
so
about that.
Let me take the beginning of this, Stelly, and then
yeah,
I'll let
yeah.
you finish it up. So, from an economic standpoint, if you have the ability to go to Mars with extreme conditions and sustain, not just sustain but expand, I mean, the technology, particularly the biotechnology, going into some of the synthetic biology that would be supporting a lot of all the other like below basic needs. How do you synthetically manufacture, everything from food to pharmaceuticals, the whole physical economy on Mars, will be leveraged with biology, and I think that will have a whole bunch. And like Elon and Zubrin recently said, the pound for pound a patent is the easiest economic thing to export from Mars. Is if you have IP, that's the real export from Mars. So we're thinking like biotech IP will be the core part, but then I'll let Stelly jump into like more of the consumer goods and luxury goods and taxation.
Well, yeah, and I'm going to go specifically towards the taxation. So I'm a believer actually that IP, while a significant constituent, is just a drop in a very large economy too. Um, Whole thing about import goods in terms of luxury products, but you can charge a crazy premium just for anything coming from Mars. But back towards the economic side in particular, I'm I'm a big believer that there is no escaping taxes, whether or not you are charged them directly. They're built into the system somewhere. And particularly, as Dan says, we have a very high reliance on centralized biosystems and particularly centralized life support systems. So fundamentally, there will be taxation to support those. One of the great parts about attacking this more directly, and this goes beyond the scope of my personal knowledge, so we'd love to get your input more on this in detail too, but one of the great points beyond this too is that we know that there are certain dedicated commercial investments that will need to happen. So in order to preclude some of the individual burden of taxation, we are able to leverage the corporate side and the venture capital side quite a bit. So a lot of our monetary creation is in venture capital.
We'll be right back. Sorry.
Oh, no problem.
Ouch.
But yeah. And so what we have a second though, I don't know if our our iPhone and our Alyssa attendees want to say hi as well, but hello to you guys. But but Mike and Corey, anything else while Fausto is?
It all sounds, as far as I'm concerned, it's all about the think tanks and everybody working together towards a common goal. I've personally never thought about taxing anything on Mars. I figured as far as Mars is concerned, my vision is kind of like, well, you get up in the morning, you have a job, whether your job is cleaning out the sewage valve to make sure the methane is coming out, and then whoever's job it is to break down that methane or work on the microbe boxes that is doing that kind of thing. Like everybody has a job to do to make the whole body work.
And we tried to incorporate some of this into like the actual physical structures. Like, so we were picturing like individual, like kind of like row homes of habitats, kind of like you can see in the picture here behind me. And then have those, like Colin was mentioning, produce like just those produce 25% of the needs for that house. So basically like structuring the designing the structures and and the human interactions to really be self-sufficient, like from day one. So hopefully there's not a lot, like you're saying, like whoever's going to clean this out, like basically take care of your own house type of thing. And what's interesting is like thinking, it was interesting. He phrased the question like, when America was first started, there was no taxes. You know, when we first go to Mars, I think there'll be almost like two currencies. There'll be like the local currency, and then there'll be like kind of the I want something from Earth currency. I think it'll be a lot.
I was going to go into that with
Barter.
Fausto as well. So part of what we have in our current economic section actually are currency controls. So we'll probably have to reiterate this in a second, but we absolutely need a local currency because of the ability to manipulate the entire Martian economy will be very available to many nations on Earth at this point. So it's important to maintain a local currency to make sure domestic goods are appropriately priced. Also, I love local currency. It's just a better economic system.
More fair.
Yeah, more money.
Well, I just feel like if everybody's contributing to the whole, then they don't really need much as long as they're contributing to the whole. But then once you want things like, let's say you want to take your girlfriend or your boyfriend or whatever out to dinner, and let's say somebody decided to create a little organic cafe, and then there needs to be some sort of monetary exchange and blah 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 blah. So
And
obviously
that's exactly the
something has
model
to
that we're
happen.
thinking of. Yeah.
Once we start asteroid mining, well, then the wealth goes up higher, and then who knows? The next thing you know, you're trading qubits of whatever. But
Qubits
no,
that might be literal cubes of gold.
exactly. And on Earth, they might be worth a ton, and on Mars, they might not really be much more than a signifying qubit.
Sorry, I have to leave. I have the delivery calling. I was going to ask you guys if you have thought about a negative carbon tax. I came up with the idea the other day of if you have heard about it. As you know, we have a carbon tax on Earth, on some countries, where you are taxed as you pollute CO2 or gases. It could be cool maybe to have a negative carbon tax on Mars. I mean, you will be you will receive a tax break or an incentive to pollute, which is the total opposite of what we have on Earth. I mean, you will be you will have an
to pollute or produce.
Are you talking about terraforming specifically? Like, are you talking about the long term? When you're saying pollute, we're talking on Mars and like carbon dioxide. It's getting kind of dark, guys. I apologize. But is it terraforming?
I mean, that could be a good tax policy to change the incentives on Mars to make people pollute on purpose. I mean, to make people emit gases, CO2, or even more stronger greenhouse gases with an economic incentive. I mean, if you have negative carbon tax,
well, it'll have to come from
plenty
the
of CO2.
carbonates. That's a biogeochemical thing, like long term. So it's not like the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is very limited. So you are right. You would have to increase that carbon dioxide. You'd mentioned methane. I don't think methane's going to last very long in the atmosphere because of the ionizing rays from the sun. So where you're getting that extra material from the regolith, and then that would be you'd be taxing the companies, maybe the wild jack mining companies that go out and pull in these rocks. It's kind of like on Dune where you see them going out mining the spice. We'd just be mining everything we can get our greasy little hands on. Taxation could come from that, but for the exponential growth of this system, for the humans, we're going to need everything to begin with to get ourselves to a level. And I think this is maybe something Mike was talking about, like where's our break-even point, and then excess, then that's when you want to start increasing the atmospheric density and see if we can't do some of the things like mirrors or giant magnets to be able to increase the protection from the sun that has been leading to the long-term atmospheric loss of Mars. So it wouldn't be necessarily taxation if I understand your question. It's more geochemical, but it can be absolutely supported by good policy and just making sure that incentivizing, don't overtax the guys who are the ones who are going to be dumping in the free carbon dioxide, because that's where we're getting our plant food.
Exactly. I probably explained it wrong. I mean a negative tax instead of instead of
You're saying
charging
incentive.
A subsidy.
Yeah, so not like a subsidy, but you have a flat tax, let's say 10%. The more you pollute, the more you emit greenhouse gases, the less taxes you have to pay. So as a company on Earth, you will have the incentive to establish something on let's say some industry on Mars to emit greenhouse gases.
Oh, you're talking carbon credit
Your,
trading.
exactly.
Damn. Carbon.
Something,
I don't think anybody. I've never heard anybody. I haven't heard of it before. But that's a point.
I think it would be a very cheap way on a law to change all the incentives to make companies pollute on purpose, emit greenhouse gases on Mars, and the bigger
cost money.
the less tax you will have to pay for it. Yeah.
At a very high level, I would think that it's very easy for us to say that the colony government will participate in the commodities market, which is dicey long term, but at the point of 1 million people, we absolutely will be participating in the commodities market. But one note on that, in that broad scale terraforming impacting the entire planet is not something that we can commit to at this point, just because of the fact that it will deal with governments beyond our own and is not at all something that we can commit to.
And the other problem from a technical standpoint is when we figured out this bioplastic producing loop and how low energetic it is that the numbers actually come out to, if you had a third of Mars covered in a plastic greenhouse, is you actually use up, to make that plastic, it's a carbon negative plastic, you would actually use up all of Mars atmosphere, is you actually couldn't cover all of Mars in a greenhouse without using up all of its, the Mars atmosphere is 95% CO2. So there's a lot of other, now in the ice caps and stuff, there's more CO2 that will come off. There's more CO2 like in the regolith and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. But that's where the wetlands can come in to be able to process and produce that extra and then replenish the atmosphere, because it's solid, it's rock versus atmosphere where it's tiny. So there's a lot of it's tied up in the carbonates, and that gets back to mining, and then, but feasible, plausible,
So I think Zubrin's concept was to like lower the entire surface of Mars by like 5 meters.
So yeah, I personally, I don't think terraforming Mars this is like para-terraforming. This they call it, where you like cover it and you like seal it in. And there you don't have to create a magnetosphere because you have the solar winds that strip away the atmosphere.
Yep.
So you're containing it all. And if you can cover a third of Mars with CO2 plus some extra to fill it with things, organic materials and stuff, that's a pretty, that actually a third of Mars surface area is the equivalent to all the arable land on Earth, ironically enough as well. So basically you're reproducing all the arable land on Earth on Mars, and and then you're taking away some of those long-term problems like solar wind stripping and what's the other one? And yeah, I can't think of the other one.
Well, GCR potentially, but you could do the same.
That's right. Yeah, GCR potential as well. Yeah, that's right. Blocking deep space radiation. But to your point of creating more greenhouse gases, I mean, the atmosphere of Mars is already 95% CO2, so you're literally just having to produce more from like mineral sources, basically, like adding the CO2 to the atmosphere.
You could use other gases like tetrafluor. I don't know the name in English, but
adding like hyper greenhouse gases,
like 1,000 times more potent, so you will have more exceptions. The more the stronger the gas you are emitting. But
it's just a thickness problem. In order to produce, there's a paper that NASA put out in 2018 talking about how, like, even if you took all the all the CO2 that we know about and got it up into the air, it still wouldn't create the atmospheric pressure pushing down. So that's why having this kind of greenhouse filled with a lot of water and using that kind of as a fake atmospheric pressure pushing down, I think has at least a short term. I mean, 45 years, not too bad for a million people. With 10 starships. I mean, that's an incredibly
So one interesting note too about terraforming in an open sense, if you were to go, say, the Red Mars route and use comets or any sort of exogenous material delivery, and you were just using water, then you do run into a problem very quickly of once you have any sort of stable atmosphere, you then get natural cycles propagating outside of your control. And right now, all of the natural cycles on Mars are pretty manageable. Even 500 kilometer an hour Martian wind is got 5 newtons of force. It's nothing. So once you introduce a real atmosphere, though, we're going to have planet-wide mudslides. Hellas Basin is going to fill. So that's going to be a problem for anyone who set up a colony there, which is very attractive in the early years due to the early atmospheric pressure. But as soon as we get any standing water on the surface, that's going to become a huge issue. But I would think that the geologists in particular are going to have a real field day about preventing that for at least the first century. Well, I don't know. So there was this thing with the moon called, was it the Moon Year or something? It was where they essentially established a high intensity research program to preserve it in its earliest state. And I'm sorry I don't have this one on hand, but I would personally advocate a decade of that on Mars, of no broad scale terraforming until we have done some sort of concerted geology inquiry.
Here, here.
But also because mudslides are very dangerous. Okay, I saw Alyssa said hi as well, but I haven't heard any questions. And so we're getting to 8:30 here, so I think we're gonna wrap this up shortly. But even if you guys are not local though, we do strongly encourage you to leave us your email and we can put you on the list. Our website should be up shortly as well, but we'll be having a lot more events to come.
Cool. Here's my email.
Yeah, if you drop it in the chat, we'll add you to our listserv. In general, we're focused on just our projects at the moment, but eventually we may move into a bit more newsletter.
Very cool project, by the way. The architecture and all the governmental flow chart. It's amazing. It's pretty cool.
Let's hope the judges think the same.
Yes.
From a greenhouse management standpoint, I didn't get into that. That's kind of interesting. You see all the domes too in a lot of space architecture. They're materially efficient to making a big volume area, but to use that as a greenhouse space is really tough. And especially if you're using passive solar heating, you want the least amount of internal volume to heat. So making it really low profile makes a lot of sense, because then when the sun comes up and it heats that greenhouse enough so that you can kind of spread out your plants over a larger area and such, makes a lot of sense. And I don't think you're materially limited to the materials you bring from Mars. I think a lot of that, the dome type of architecture was just optimizing.
All right. Well, thanks guys for dropping us your emails. Unless anyone had any other questions or topics you wanted to bring up, I think we're going to wrap up.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I really enjoyed this, and you all are extremely brilliant.
Well, Corey, we need everybody. I mean, you're an organizer. You're the kind of person who can develop and help bring this technology out. So we're all on the bleeding cutting edge right now of what could be a very good thing. So thank you for the compliment. But dude, we're bashful and we absolutely need everybody. So please stay on board with us, because I mean, we got to get the message out. This is how it happens.
Well, yeah, exactly. And I spend my afternoons drawing designs of my cities. So
Nice.
I don't know if you
Yeah.
can see them.
Oh, geez. Yeah. Oh, well, dude, awesome. Well, okay.
They
So
can
now
hold
we
almost 1 million
got the
people. They're
content.
underground. They're protected. They're pressurized. But I can't grow food, and I can't leach chemicals out of the soil. I can't mine, and I can't do financials. That's not my part of life.
This is a really big tent. This is the biggest tent because
Oh,
it's got to
yeah.
keep us all in it.
But that's what's so cool is like everybody has a role to play, whether it's even somebody figuring out how to tax, which I never thought about taxes on
Ditto.
Mars in my life.
Right?
I got a final question before I leave. Did
Please.
you include cats on your city? Because
Oh,
I've been hearing a cat, and I think they are very important. At least a cat or a dog.
so cats, actually, yes. And I can go into more detail on this in a month when I do mine, but even at 1,000
you hear
people,
that?
you can start to bring small pets like this if you're willing to sacrifice a certain amount of like personal mass.
That's
Right.
And that's
I
actually
always
a
thought
cat
about
bird. It's a cat bird directly above me, bitching at me because I'm near. They've got a nest in here, so that's what you're hearing.
Oh, that's fun.
there's Eartha. She's like, I'm going to Mars. She's like, take me. Go.
cool.
Cats will bring a lot of people to Mars, I think.
I'm allergic. I can't be near them. They're like rabbits. But I don't hate them. I do like them. But then we have to think about their waste disposal as well,
True. But
because we're in an enclosed environment. We have to.
it can go in the thermal oxidator, though. So for most of the biohazard waste, we're just going to burn it, at least for an earlier time, but it'll get captured.
And then break
Alright.
it down into others.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. All
Well,
right, guys.
thanks you guys. I really appreciate it. And I left my email up there for y'all. And
Yeah,
peace
I'm
and
just
love.
making sure I'm grabbing those, but you guys have a great week, and we will hopefully see you in 2 weeks.
Yeah. Thanks all.
Yay. All right.
All right, bye, everyone.
Bye.